Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 774B, and today's date is September 24th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Pentagon's War Plans for Russia Shows a No-Win Scenario for the U.S. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, Friday, I'll be uploading an interview with Stephen Lenman. We discussed Ukraine, Syria, fascism. If you're on the X22Report.com email alert system, you will get an email. If you signed up to the YouTube channel X22 Report Spotlight, YouTube should send you an email that it was uploaded. If not, you can come right over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight. It will bring you right to the video. Or you can come over to the X22Report.com site. You will see the video on the right-hand side. Just scroll down a little bit, look over to the right, and you'll see that video. Let's get right into the economic collapse geopolitical news. Now, we've talked about free speech and the rights of the people quite a bit. We talked about how colleges are setting up little areas telling you that, oh, you can speak freely in this area, but not that area. We talked about how the government is telling us that there's this 100-mile constitutional free zone around the country. Well, we all know free speech is allowed anywhere in the United States, wherever we want. That is our right. And we must enforce that right by never, ever going into those free speech areas. But in Dallas, they tried to ban free speech on an overpass roadway in the city of Dallas. And they said that, listen, you don't have the right to speak freely over there. And basically what happened is they hired a constitutional lawyer, and they fought the city of Dallas. And we see now that they ruled that, yeah, this is completely unconstitutional. On Monday, September 21st, U.S. District Court Judge David Goodbay ruled in favor of the Grassroots Overpasses for America and named litigant OFA Texas State Leader Valerie Villarreal in a lawsuit the group filed last year. The judge awarded the $1 per plaintiff damages request in the legal documents as recognition of defendant's violation of the First Amendment under City of Dallas Ordinance 29244 of City Code Chapter 28. Places like overpasses where thousands of cars pass each day have replaced the town square. Overpasses are a valuable public forum for speech, and the government can never place limits or restrictions on speech without explaining why it is necessary and constitutional. Because when they tried to make their case that it's going to disrupt drivers, it's distracting, they brought up billboards. Well, there are billboard signs that are along the road. Do they distract drivers? No, they don't. So their argument completely fell apart. They didn't want people speaking freely on the roadway. So they tried to ban it. And thank God they had a constitutional lawyer to prove that, no, we're allowed to have free speech anywhere. So right now, we can see they're continually trying to ban people from speaking freely. And we see this going on quite a bit. When there's protests in colleges, almost everywhere at this point. And they're always chipping away at our rights. We see they're continually pushing gun control. But guess what? Gun control is not working. There was a new Rasmussen report, a national telephone survey. 66% saying that the government should not tell people if they should own guns or not. It should not be the responsibility of the government. Well, they're absolutely right. The government has no say in it. The government has no rights in it. The people have the say. And we have the right to own a weapon. And what I find very interesting about all of this is we always have these senators, congressmen, congresswomen coming out telling us how we cannot have weapons, or we cannot have free speech, or you can be searched whenever we want. of course, always violating our rights. And what always happens is the laws are always different for them. Because they're above the law, right? Well, no, they're not. And there was a long-time anti-gun advocate, State Senator R.C. Soules. He's 74 years old. And he made it his career being against gun ownership for the general public. But guess what? He owns a weapon. And his house was broken into. And guess what he did? He pulled out that weapon and he shot at the intruder to protect himself. Well, so wait a minute. He wants the general public not to have weapons, but it's okay for him to have a weapon to protect himself. What happened to the story they continually tell us? Well, you have the police to protect you. Do you really think during that period when any intruder is breaking into your home, the police are ever going to arrive in time? No, they always arrive after the crime. But it's very interesting how all these people talk about gun control, how people shouldn't have weapons. They always seem to have the weapon themselves. Dianne Feinstein, she has a weapon, but she says people should not have weapons. So again, a hypocrite. It's always the opposite of what they say. And this is proven over and over and over again. And this just goes to show you, the government has no say in what we do in our daily lives. The government, they are the secretary of the people to take care of the country and to do right by the people. That's it. That's why it says we the people, not we the government. And it seems that they've made all of these positions a career, which is a complete mistake. It should be volunteer, and they should have a real career. A politician, being someone in politics, is not really a career. So what we're seeing right now is the government trying to push their views on the people instead of supporting the people and working for the people. Because who are they really working for? Ah, that's right, the central bankers, corporations, and other foreign entities, countries. And they're always doing it in their own best interest and not for the people. We see out in London, there's a homeless problem. And homeless young people are now being given tickets by London Charity so they can sleep on night buses, because the number of people who are homeless, who are young, is increasing at this point. The New Horizon Day Center, which seeks to provide accommodations for homeless young people, has revealed that they give out these bus tickets because their accommodations fill up so quickly. They have no place to place them. And we see that this number of people who are homeless is increasing. 55,000 households were designated as homeless by councils between July 2014 and June of this year, compared to only 39,000 during the same period in 2009-2010. So it has increased. And we're seeing this a lot. We're seeing not just in England, not just in Europe, but here in the United States, Canada, that the amount of people who are worse off when we look back at 2008 is increasing at a dramatic rate. Now, something very interesting. We know that Catalonia is going to have a vote to basically separate from Spain. Now, Spain does not want this to happen. The central banking system does not want this to happen. The bank came out, tried to scare everyone. Ooh, if Catalonia separates, ooh, this is going to be a problem. The economy is going to come crashing down. And of course, they're using a lot of scare tactics. But we have to remember, Catalonia, that's the wealthy area of Spain. And what's very interesting about this, they're very worried about this, the bankers, because all of a sudden, 30 armored vans were entering and leaving the building in unknown directions at the Bank of Spain. And the Bank of Spain refused to comment on what this operation was. And they have all these vans pulling up to the bank, loading up something, and leaving. And most likely, it's probably gold. And we know for sure if they're doing this, they're worried that when this vote goes through, it might be that Catalonia separates from Spain, so they're taking precautions at this time. Now we have another U.S. Embassy warning. We're getting a lot of these all of a sudden, and this makes me very concerned and worried because we've had one in Chad, South Africa, Libya. They've reinstated that warning and told people get out now. We have one now in Kuala Lumpur. U.S. Embassy in Malaysia warns American citizens to avoid a populous tourist street in the capital because there are now threats. So I'm thinking, since we've been hearing all these warnings, we are definitely going to see some type of major false flag in all of these areas. And we need to keep an eye out on everything because this is showing me that something is definitely coming. Now, the U.S. Department of Defense is considering lodging a formal protest after a Chinese fighter got too close to an American RC-135 reconnaissance plane over the Yellow Sea. Now, we have to understand what the 135U is. It's basically strategic electronic reconnaissance, and it relays the information to the President, Secretary of Defense, Department of Defense leaders, and theater commanders, locating and identifying foreign military land, naval, and airborne radar signals. The combat cent collects and examines each system, providing strategic analysis for warfighters, collects data, stores the data for further analysis later down the line, hands it off to intelligence communities, and we realize that basically the United States was spying on China. And China launched their fighter jets, flew up to the plane to take a look because they were spying on China. The United States would do the same exact thing if China was flying very close to the United States. But of course the story would be different. We'd have Chinese spy plane approaches the United States and spying on the United States for an attack later on. Well, we could say the same thing now. The U.S. is looking at everything and gathering intelligence at this point in time. Now, the question is, why are they doing this? We know why. For the upcoming war. We see France right now. They're going to be selling the Mistral ships. And of course, the corporate media comes out there saying that Russia basically removed itself from buying the Mistral ships and it's their fault. But what really happened was the U.S. put pressure on France because of the Ukraine situation and said, do not hand over those ships to Russia. Russia was ready to pay for it. But it looks like Egypt allegedly is stepping up and going to purchase these ships. Now, out in Ukraine, we see that the story that the U.S., Kiev, NATO has been continually shoving down our throats is kind of falling apart. But the corporate media is continually using it, trying to convince everyone that, again, Russia is a threat. They have soldiers there. But a soldier has come forward who was in the armed forces in Kiev. And he was saying that he was told that there were Russian terrorists in the Donbass region. But he only found people defending their homes. He said, I must admit that there is a lot that we just weren't told. First, we were told that the inhabitants of the towns had been taken hostage by militants. It was soon clear that the people showed no signs of being hostages. Secondly, 99% of all problems in the Republic were caused by the economic blockade to that area. I do not think that the People's Militia has Russian military advisors. They're volunteers there. That is no secret. A complete intervention of the regular Russian army, as Kiev has told us, is not happening. Now, we have to remember, the U.S. government right now is a fascist government, and they're spreading fascism all around the globe. And this is when government and corporations intertwine. And when the government and corporations make profit, the 1% take all the money. They take everything. Natural resources, everything. When there are losses, they're not expected to pay for the losses. The losses go to the people. So you can see right now that's not a fair system. Fascism is almost like a dictatorship. They don't want people to have rights. They don't care about the people. They think of them as slaves, serfs, to work for them. And when the U.S. government is saying they're spreading democracy, no, they're spreading fascism. We're under fascism rule right now. And we can see in Ukraine that they're not abiding by the Minsk II ceasefire agreement, even though they're trying to convince everyone that yes, Poroshenko and the rest are. And they're moving around their heavy weapons. And now they're saying that, yes, we're following the Minsk II agreement, but heavy weapon withdrawal doesn't mean troop withdrawal. So we'll remove the heavy weapons, but all of our troops are going to stay on the contact line. There will be no retreat, they say. And we know that the Minsk II ceasefire, it expires at the end of this year. And we know the United States government central bankers and other forces from other countries, Poland, Spain, UK, are all in Ukraine training National Guard, the regular army, which is in violation of the Minsk II. So they could care less about the Minsk II. They're ready to go full force with an operation. And we've already reported they're training for a dirty bomb exercise. Why would they be doing that? We see Russia right now is deploying their Tor MTU missile system to guard the Kuril Islands, and that is very close to the Bering Straits next to Alaska, and they're worried about drones, enemy aircraft, missiles flying in that region, and it will defend that entire region because this is a defensive weapon. Each of these air defense missile systems carries about 8 missiles, which are launched vertically. It provides reliable protection against air targets flying at speeds of up to about 700 meters per second. And it can detect and identify 48 targets in the sky and determine which of them is the most dangerous. Highly advanced piece of equipment. Now, out in the Middle East, we see things are definitely ramping up. The U.S. is going to provide $59 million in aid to the puppet government in Lebanon to fight against the people who are rising up because they don't want that government to fall. We see the Islamic State is continually telling everyone that they're responsible for these bombings in the mosque like the one in Yemen. So all of a sudden the Islamic State is in Yemen and they decided to bomb someplace. No, every time there's an explosion or a car bomb, they use the Islamic State to show the terrorists are in these countries. That's all they're doing, because we have to remember, the authorization for war allows the U.S. to go after the Islamic State wherever they are. So they need to say, yes, look, they're there, they're in this country, we're allowed to go back into these countries. That's what they are doing at this point. The original authorization for war only included Al-Qaeda. The new one is the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, or any other terrorist group. They updated it. Now, the Russian Federation Council Chair, Valentina Matviyenko, says the Islamic State regime is a new format of fascism. Absolutely. Because there's a fascistic government controlling them. So of course it's going to be fascism. And we see that the Islamic State in Syria is trying to create like an economy there. Why would they be doing that? Why in the world? Because they're trying to show that this area is no longer part of Syria. We have our own economy. We have our own currency. We're putting people to work. And of course, the proxy army for the United States told all the people there that everyone will have work. No one will have no work. But what we see in each one of these areas is that these areas that are conquered by the proxy army, there's very high unemployment, lack of money, and inequality and high taxes. And just look around every place the U.S. has been where they've done this regime change to put in place a fascist puppet government. Humanitarian crisis, the economies collapse, people rise up, people don't have jobs, everything falls apart, and there's war. That's what you see time and time again. We see Merkel, the Austrian minister. They're both agreeing now that Assad has to be part of the talks. And Russia right now is saying that the United States is lying about Syria. Because Washington insists that Syrian President Assad should stand down. So they're bringing up this document, the 2012 Geneva Communique. The communique, signed 3 years ago by international governments as well as the United States, European Union, and Arab League, clearly states the political future of Syria must be determined by the Syrian people themselves. The binding document had followed lengthy negotiations between Russia, China, and Western powers, and it was signed in Geneva in the summer of 2012 under the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, and Hillary Clinton was the U.S. Secretary of State at the time. Nowhere in the Geneva Accord is it mentioned that Syria's Assad should relinquish his power whatsoever. So it looks like the U.S. is going against the document that they signed. Because the document says the U.S. and other nations cannot decide if Assad steps down. It has to be the people. And guess what? The people voted in Assad twice. And this is the problem. This is the problem the United States government central bankers are having. Now we see Putin right now is bringing in military equipment. Now they had contracts with Syria. They're bringing in all that equipment. And if Assad says, listen, we need more military equipment, guess what? Putin is going to bring in more equipment. But the United States is continually out there saying that the Kremlin is getting ready to launch unilateral strikes against the Islamic State targets, and they're going to be going after the Islamic State. I don't know about that, because we have to look at the actions of Putin. I don't think he's going to come out and bring in ground forces, have Russians fly the planes and go after the Islamic State. That's not the way he acts. He sits back, lets the other country do what it needs to do. Right now, Assad and Putin understand they're creating this coalition to go after the Islamic State. They're asking the United States to come in and assist, or they will assist them. And every time the United States says, no, we don't want your help, it looks suspicious to the world. And we need to understand, as the U.S. continually says, no, we don't want you to do this, one must think, why not? Is it because you're going after Assad, or are you going after the Islamic State? And we know that by Russia giving these advanced weapons to Assad, they can take out the Islamic State in a couple of weeks. Now, this is going to look very, very suspicious, because how many bombing runs did the U.S. and the coalition forces done in Syria? 6,000 to 7,000? And we know that Russia already has satellite intel, already has drone intel of where all the positions are of the proxy army for the United States government. And this is what they're really worried about. We're seeing China allegedly has ships en route to Syria. I'm not too sure about this. I don't know if they really want to get involved, but we're going to have to watch that much, much closer. We see Canada, they're calling for a no-fly zone over Syria. It is a must. Of course they want a no-fly zone. This way, Assad can't fly the Russian aircraft. They can't fly the drones to destroy the proxy army of the United States, which is the Islamic State. NATO right now is going to basically examine a full spectrum deterrence against Russia by 2016. They're putting together a plan to go and attack Russia. When we know the Pentagon has dusted off their war plans for Russia, and they've been running a lot of scenarios right now. And guess what? They cannot find a scenario in which the U.S. wins. The U.S. always loses. This is very troubling, and we have to remember, this is an advanced actor, an advanced country with real weapons which are equal or better than the United States. If Russia is brought into this war, China would follow. Their forces combined, not good. And we have to remember, these countries have the ability to fire multiple missiles that will reach the U.S. They have the ability to sneak up on the U.S. underwater and not even be detected. They've already done it. And fire their missiles from there. We are looking at a lose-lose game here. It will not work. But we have to remember, the central bankers, the U.S. government, they've been preparing. They have food, they have water, they have underground shelters. Everything for the general population, you're on your own. And as we know, they want to reduce the population anyhow. So for them, it's win-win. But for us, it isn't. Hopefully, it doesn't go that far. But we all need to make preparations, just like the U.S. government is making preparations. We all need to be ready. We all need to continually stock up on food, water, supplies, cash, cash, gold, silver, weapons to protect ourselves, because we don't know what is going to happen here. If you haven't started, you can go to lifereliance.com. They have bug-out bags, water filtration system, food. You can customize everything and have it shipped right to your house. But if the government is being prepared, we also need to be prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thank you.